Hey guys, my name is Arnold Schwarzenegger. Today I am special guest. Hi Zak Bagans, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Do you have a favorite Ghost Adventures moment?
I think one of the greatest experiences we had on the show is when we investigated the Goldfield Hotel. As soon as we got into the room that was occupied by the lady in black, the shadow figure that had been haunting that building for decades immediately started interacting with us in some really terrifying ways, like blowing out candles and opening up drawers.
Your thoughts on Demon House?
I think it was the scariest experience that I've ever had in my entire life. When we were in the home, I actually met a demon and was scratched as a result, but that was actually just the beginning, because once we left the home, the demon then stalked me and literally tormented our lives for over a year after that.
What is the scariest thing you did in Bobby Mackey's music world? Wilder, KY.
Oh, I think the scariest thing in that building was actually the music room and the basement at Bobby Mackey's Music World. When we got into the basement, a lot of things started happening. There was a dark mass that we actually caught that night in the basement. And during the seance that we had in the music hall, another thing happened where a voice came through the speakers in the middle in the darkness saying, "Get out."
Old Charleston jail.
On this particular case, the Charleston jail, the most terrifying thing that happened that night was the apparition of a young woman who basically walked right in front of our camera lens as we were trying to take evidence. It wasn't until the next day when we were reviewing the footage and we realized that we had captured a ghost.
Rose Hall.
Rose Hall is a pretty scary location. I mean, you basically have the infamous Annie Palmer, the White Witch, who supposedly haunted and murdered her 3 husbands and countless slaves in that home. So whenever we investigate that home, it was the one investigation where there was always a strange presence wherever we were.
Rocky Point Manor. What's your thoughts about it?
Rocky Point Manor is definitely an iconic location because the infamous Annabelle doll was actually kept in that building for a period of time. And the family that lived there was harassed for months by an entity they called the Man, and they basically got tortured and tormented until the point they had enough. So when we were in that home, we actually went to the rooms where the entity manifested itself and actually experienced things like slamming doors and footsteps in the next room.
Return to Virginia.
When we went back to Virginia City, the infamous Washoe Club, that probably was one of the greatest locations that we ever investigated, because we ended up getting some of the most terrifying evidence that we've ever caught on video that night.
Right.
The first thing that comes to mind is when we did the spirit box session in the basement of the club, and we ended up getting some pretty terrifying things like, "Help me," and "I'm trapped." It was the most intense EVP session that we've ever had.
Letchworth Village.
Letchworth Village is a pretty iconic location because it was one of the first asylums in the United States. It was a place where the physically and mentally disabled would be housed and not get treated very well. So there's a lot of negative energy there. So when we investigated, we ended up having a lot of stuff going on while we were there, like seeing a dark mass walk into a room, hearing doors slamming, seeing figures, etc.
What is the scariest thing about Lizzie Borden house?
I think what scared me the most about the Lizzie Borden home was the murder room, where Lizzie Borden killed her father and stepmother. That room was the most haunted and terrifying area of the house. Whenever we were in that room, I had this feeling that something was just not right.
Like what?
We were the victims of some pretty terrifying experiences while in the room, like hearing knocking, footsteps, and a woman laughing hysterically. It was like someone or something was toying with us.
Oh, you think it was Lizzie Borden toying?
Yeah, definitely. To this day, I truly believe that it was the spirit of Lizzie who was terrorizing us.
What was your reaction about Oddfellows Asylum?
I gotta admit, Oddfellows is probably one of the craziest investigations I've ever been a part of. It felt like the whole building was alive. There was tons of activity going on from the moment we got there till we got out. There was banging on the walls and tons of stuff getting thrown in our face.
Haunted Hollywood.
The Hollywood Entertainment Museum is pretty infamous because it was built over the former home of Rudolph Valentino, and when we were there, we caught some pretty terrifying stuff, like banging on the walls and doors opening up by themselves. There was a room in that building called the Black Room because it was filled with black velvet, and it was extremely dark. and very evil.
What is the craziest thing about Grand Canyon caverns?
The craziest thing that happened in the Grand Canyon caves was when we were locked down in the caves. There's a long tunnel that we explored. And when I was in that tunnel, all of a sudden I heard my name being called out and I heard a strange laughter. And it was one of the freakiest moments of my entire life.
Los coches adobe.
The Los Coche Adobe is pretty crazy. I would have to say the most interesting thing that happened at that location was when the three of us all simultaneously had our flashlights turn off and back on by themselves.
Fear Factory.
The Fear Factory is like the epicenter of evil. It was so crazy. Almost immediately after we got into the building, we started hearing footsteps coming towards us and the sound of someone banging on the wall. And whenever we got in the basement, I immediately started having a really hard time breathing properly.
What's your thoughts in reaction about this one? Old Montana State Prison.
Old Montana State Prison was insane. As soon as we got into that building, every single one of us started to feel sick all at the same time. We were all suffering from headaches and nausea. But the thing that took the cake of this entire investigation was when we did the SLS camera in the basement and we caught a dark mass that was walking towards us at a rapid rate.
Edinburgh Manor. What is the scariest thing?
As far as Edinburgh Manor, the creepiest thing that I remember about that place is that there was a room that was called Death Chamber. And whenever we were in there, we all could feel this dark energy just washing over us. The worst part was the temperature kept dropping for no reason at all.
Old Licking County Jail.
Old Licking County Jail is iconic because that's where we had a demonic attack on Aaron inside one of the cells. We also caught an SLS figure of a child that kept disappearing and reappearing right in front of us.
The Haunted Museum.
The Haunted Museum was incredible because we got a chance to investigate a ton of haunted and cursed items, like a demon mirror from Zozo, a haunted Dybbuk box, and the original Robert the Doll.
St. James Hotel.
The St. James Hotel was one of the craziest investigations that we've ever done. I felt like I was in a Stephen King horror story. We encountered footsteps, knocking, and dark shadows while in that place. But what was the scariest moment of all was when a door opened right in front of my face.
Nevada State Prison.
Nevada State Prison was nuts. As soon as we got in, we started hearing shuffling in the jail cells. And when we got into the old death row cell, we all got this feeling of being watched, and when we did the SLS scan on that area, it looked like someone was trying to unlock the cell door. It was pretty intense.
Dumas Brothel.
The Dumas Brothel was one of the most iconic investigations that we have ever done. As soon as we got into the building, we saw tons of strange things, like a woman staring at us through the window of the room, an orb that appeared out of nowhere, etc. But the creepiest thing that happened to us that night was when we took all of our equipment and placed it in one room, and all of a sudden, the door slammed shut completely by itself.
What was the scariest moment you have that day? Goatman's Bridge.
Goatman's Bridge is probably one of the greatest haunted places that I've had the opportunity to investigate, and also one that genuinely scared me. Whenever we were on the bridge, myself and the crew started getting scratched, and Aaron was pulled by an unknown force.
Do you know who pushed Aaron's in Goatman's Bridge?
Nope. Whoever or whatever that was pushing Aaron definitely wasn't a human entity, that's for sure.
Zayud House.
As far as the loot house, the most terrifying thing that happened that night was when we got the SLS to work and we captured a full body figure of a tall man that was in the room with us, and the guy was like 7 feet tall.
Can you tell me about this one, Dumas Brothel?
Dumas Brothel is an iconic place for us because it's the oldest brothel in America, and it was the first place we ever investigated. It was a place where a ton of paranormal activity happened. We caught a spirit box session where a woman was talking to us through the entity, and also the SLS picked up on a little girl hiding a corner of a room.
Twin Bridges Orphanage.
Twin Bridges Orphanage was scary because once we got into the house, we started seeing tons of stuff, like hearing footsteps and voices and feeling a dark presence. But the most unsettling thing that happened that night was when we were in the room of a little girl, and all of a sudden Aaron got scratched out of nowhere, and we also caught a doll moving on the SLS camera.
What is your thought about St. Anne's Retreat?
St. Anne's Retreat freaked me out to the core because it started out pretty simple, but once we got to this one room, things got really scary. On the SLS camera, for just the briefest of moments, we saw the outline of a guy sitting in a wheelchair who then disappeared.
Hotel Midland?
Hotel Metlin was truly a terrifying investigation. The moment that we got there, we immediately started hearing doors slamming and footsteps coming from upstairs. But things really got intense when we were doing the Spirit Box and SLS sessions. The Spirit Box kept saying, "Leave now," and the SLS was showing a creepy outline of a little black girl running up and down the hall.
Hellhole Prison?
Hellhole Prison was wild because whenever we were there were just tons of stuff happened to us, like hearing voices in the dark, feeling a dark presence, and then I myself got scratched and my hat was pulled off my head by some unseen force.
The Palace Saloon?
The Palace Saloon was one of the craziest investigations we caught because right in front of us, Aaron got touched by an unknown entity. We also heard a woman's voice laughing at us and saw a dark figure running through the room.
What about Mackay Mansion?
Mackay Mansion was an iconic location because it was full of crazy stuff. At one point, we heard what sounded an entity screaming at us, and it was so loud, I thought it was coming from one of the members of the crew. But it definitely was an entity.
Colorado Gold Mine?
Colorado Gold Mine was insane. We heard tons of voices on the Spirit Box, like the entity telling us to get out, and the SLS kept seeing tons of creepy entities like a little boy and a woman watching us.
Asylum Curbing Needles?
Asylum 49 was extremely terrifying. As soon as we got into the building, there was a feeling of dread, and when I was in the old surgical room, I started to have difficulty breathing and feeling sick. But the creepiest thing we caught there was when the Spirit Box kept saying, "Leave now."
Witches in Magma?
Witches in Magna was creepy and terrifying because whenever we got into the witch's house, we found old candles surrounded by chicken bones. And when we did a Spirit Box session in the home, it sounded like we heard a woman talking through the Spirit Box saying, "Leave us alone."
Upper Fruitland Curse?
The Upper Fruitland Curse was absolutely insane. The moment we got there, the atmosphere was just full of malevolence. We also caught tons of creepy voices on the Spirit Box and even saw people running in the SLS camera. But the creepiest thing that happened was when Aaron and I felt something grab at the back of our pants.
What is your thoughts about Skinwalker Canyon?
Skinwalker Canyon is probably one of the creepiest places I've ever investigated. It was such an uneasy feeling because you always had this feeling like you were being watched. Plus, we heard strange noises out in the darkness, which sounded like growling and footsteps. Skinwalker Canyon was an unnerving place to be.
Have you ever catch a skinwalker?
We've actually seen entities that were probably skinwalkers. We haven't physically laid eyes on a skinwalker during the investigation. But we've caught dark entities on the SLS camera and heard strange voices on the Spirit Box while at Skinwalker Canyon.
What did the Spit Box say?
Whenever we did a Spirit Box session in Skinwalker Canyon, we would hear lots of strange things. We would hear voices telling us to leave. We would hear a woman saying random words like yes and okay, but the strangest thing we heard was a voice saying kill.
You have the scariest moment with this Route 666.
Route 666 was definitely an iconic location. The creepiest thing that happened there was when we were inside the devil worshipper's home. It looked like the spirit of a witch was talking through the Spirit Box because all the answers it was giving us were in Old English and Latin, and it was saying things to us like, "Join us!"
Exorcism in Erie.
The Exorcism House in Erie was an amazing place to investigate, even though the people who lived in the home were extremely hostile towards us. We still were able to capture some really amazing evidence. At one point while we were there, all of us kept hearing what sounded like the voice of a demon growling.
Silent movie theater.
The silent movie theater was a creepy place. As soon as we got into the theater, we started seeing figures in the balcony and heard strange noises. But the craziest thing that happened was when we used the SLS camera, we captured an inhuman figure running through the theater.
Double Eagle Restaurant.
The Double Eagle Restaurant was a creepy place. As soon as we stepped into the building, we all started feeling like we were being watched. And when we went into the basement, we could feel dark energy surrounding us. But the most terrifying thing to happen that night was when we heard a deep voice say, "I'm coming to get you."
Stardust Ranch.
Stardust Ranch was extremely creepy and terrifying. As soon as we got onto the property, we started hearing the voices of dead cattle and coyotes and saw a dark shadow that darted across the desert when our friend tried to shoot it. But the craziest moment that took place was the moment we went to the burial site where the UFO hunter claimed he shot and killed an alien.
Have you ever catch a UFO before?
I think the closest thing we ever caught to a UFO was out in the desert while we were in Stardust Ranch. We were trying to take a video of where the UFO hunters claimed they shot an alien. In the background of the video, we saw an object flying through the sky that moved unlike any other aircraft that could be explained.
Do you believe in aliens?
Yeah, I believe in aliens. I mean, honestly, the universe is so vast and there's so many planets out there that support life that it's hard to believe we're the only form of intelligence out there.
The Alley of Darkness.
The Alley of Darkness was definitely a creepy location. The moment we got there, it felt like tons of evil energy surrounding us. But the strangest thing that happened during that investigation was when I heard a voice say, "Leave my alley."
Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Ripley's Believe It or Not was an amazing place to investigate. We saw so many creepy things there, like a voodoo statue that turned on its own. But the most unique paranormal experience we had there was when we captured a spirit on the SLS camera that looked like a floating head in a hoodie.
Terror in Fontana.
Fontana's town hall was one that's going to haunt me forever. When we got there, we were dealing with hostile spirits that wanted to physically harm us. But the most terrifying experience was when we did a spirit box session and we heard a deep voice yell, "You're dead."
Crisis in Oakdale.
The old motel in Oakdale was a scary location because anytime we had something happen, it seemed like the entity that was there was following us. We kept hearing whispering voices around us and even hearing a little child crying. But the creepiest moment that took place during that investigation was when we saw a shadow figure moving in the room behind us.
Westerfeld House.
The Westerfield house was extremely creepy because whenever we were there, tons of stuff was happening to us. We were dealing with strange voices, weird noises, even something threw a camera at Nick. But the creepiest moment that happened that night was when we heard an entity laughing at us.
Stressinghus Hospital.
St. Ignatius Hospital was a creepy location. As soon as we got in the building, I felt an extremely dark and negative energy around me. We even had Aaron be touched by something. But the most interesting thing that happened that night was when the SLS camera started seeing figures standing in the hallway.
Crescent Hotel.
The Crescent Hotel was absolutely one of my favorite places to investigate because there was so many things happening. We kept hearing strange footsteps following us and even voices on the spirit box. We even had Aaron get scratched on the back of his hand. But the creepiest part of that entire investigation was when we got into the morgue and saw a dark shadow figure pass by a door.
Eureka Mining Town.
Eureka Mining Town was absolutely terrifying. We kept hearing weird sounds coming from the darkness, and even the spirit box kept telling us to leave. But the most terrifying moment that happened that night was when we were in the mine and had several people hear a man talking to them.
Wolf Creek Inn.
Wolf Creek Inn is a very iconic location. As soon as we went into the inn itself, we started hearing voices coming from the bedrooms and even kept hearing footsteps everywhere we went. But the creepiest experience we had was when we did the SLS camera in the old dining hall and it kept showing the figures of little girls.
Do you have any thoughts about the Titanic Museum?
The Titanic Museum was creepy and interesting because there were actually parts of the actual ship in there. We did a ton of things in there, like spirit box sessions, SLS scans, even a seance. But the most interesting part, and maybe even the creepiest moment of that investigation, was when we heard a deep and demonic sounding voice say, "I'm trapped here."
Ghosts of the Old West.
Ghosts of the Old West was an iconic place to investigate because we heard tons of things like footsteps and voices and even saw dark shadows walking among the old buildings. But the creepiest part of that whole investigation was when a dark shadow figure that looked like an old man kept staring at us through a window of one of the houses.
Ghost Adventures Live.
Ghost Adventures Live was a very interesting and scary investigation because not only were we dealing with strange noises and doors banging, but we had the people who were watching start to experience things as well. And the most terrifying thing that happened that night was the moment we saw a dark shadow figure appear in front of us when we were in the ballroom.
Did you catch an EVP?
Yeah, we caught a ton of EVPs that night. My personal favorite thing was when I heard a woman's voice whisper in my ear.
What did she say?
The voice whispered, "You don't belong here."
And you give the chills.
Yeah, it gave me chills because I could feel the woman's breath on the side of my neck, and it just made that moment even scarier.
Cape Disappointment.
Cape Disappointment was absolutely terrifying. We got to investigate an old military base that was abandoned. And as soon as we got there, we just started seeing tons of things, like figures moving in the woods, and the spirit box kept screaming at us saying, "Get out." But the creepiest experience we had was when we did an SLS scan in the old officers' quarters and saw a figure of a creepy-looking man with a hat standing in the doorway.
What did you say when you saw that ghost?
All of us immediately started feeling dread whenever we saw that ghost. I was personally freaked out by it and started saying, "Get out," to the ghost to get rid of it. But my friend Aaron did the opposite, and he started taunting the entity whenever it appeared.
Like how?
Whenever we saw the entity, my friend Aaron was taunting it, saying things like, show us what you got. And even saying things like, "I'm not afraid of you, and I'll take you on."
What did the ghost did?
Whenever he would taunt the ghost, the presence in the building would get crazier. We found a door that had been locked prior just open up by itself. We also saw dark shadows in the woods surrounding the outside and even kept hearing whispering from a nearby room.
Los Feliz Murder House.
The Los Feliz murder house was iconic, especially because the actual bodies of the people who were murdered were still there for us to investigate. We also caught some of the most insane things that night. We heard whispers in the darkness. Dark shadows kept appearing in the room, and even my friend Aaron fell so hard that he literally left a dent in the wall.
Haunted Hollow Forest.
The Haunted Hollow Forest was a strange location because we kept hearing the sound of footsteps behind us and even heard voices. But the creepiest things we heard was when we captured strange sounds in the middle of the forest that sounded almost like a woman's voice growling.
Territorial Enterprise.
The Territorial Enterprise was a place where we had a lot of strange things happen. We heard doors banging and a spirit saying things to us. We even saw a shadow figure dart from behind a chair. But we're not the only ones that saw things there. Other guests and staff at the location have reported seeing a ghost of a little boy in a sailor suit that haunts the bar.
Haunting in the Hills.
The Haunting in the Hills was an insane investigation. We heard a ton of strange things like doors banging around us, and even our cameras caught a lot of strange stuff. But the most scary thing that we experienced that night was when we heard a man's voice behind us say, "Watch out."
Terror at the Toy Shop.
The Terror at the Toy Shop was an interesting location to investigate, mainly because the whole building was full of evil energy. We kept hearing strange voices, as well as the sound of a woman singing a lullaby, and a little girl's laughing would follow. But the creepiest moment that happened was when Nick and Aaron were alone in a toy room and saw a dark shadow figure standing across the room.
The Great Saltaire Curse. What do you think about this one?
The Great Saltaire Curse was amazing because we got to investigate a theater and an old casino area. We heard a ton of strange noises, but the creepiest thing we heard was when we were in the casino room and heard a woman's voice whisper in the same area where she was murdered.
She was murderer.
There was a room that was called the Death Room, and the story goes that a mobster murdered his girlfriend in that room with a revolver, and you can still see the bloodstains on the wall to this day.
Belmont Ghost Town.
The Belmont Ghost Town was an iconic investigation. We got to investigate an old town that was abandoned by its citizens. We got a lot of interesting things like the sound of footsteps, a shadow figure of a woman walking through the darkness, and we also got to investigate a really old mining shaft that went under the town. And the scariest thing to happen while on that investigation was when Nick said the name Johnny, and there was a loud knocking on the mine wall behind me. It scared the hell out of me.
Hotel Congress.
The Hotel Congress was a pretty creepy investigation. It was an old hotel with a lot of history, and that night we kept catching tons of things, like a figure walking past us, doors opening and closing in front of us, and even a shadow figure walking down the hotel hallway. But the creepiest thing that happened was when I started taunting the ghost by saying that it wasn't strong enough to do anything to me, and then I heard somebody say, "Say it one more time, punk."
Was the ghost playing my games with you?
The ghost was definitely playing games with us that night, and we had a hell of a time trying to get out of that hotel. It was also the only hotel that I've ever been to that we were warned to not even go in the basement.
Did you go to the basement?
Yeah, we did go to the basement. It was a cold, dark place with lots of strange things going on. We heard footsteps coming from the area we couldn't explore. And we also saw a shadow figure in room where we were investigating.
The Hospital of Horror.
LA Hospital of Horrors was pretty terrifying because the whole place used to be a hospital back in the 30s, but it was abandoned in 1969. We heard a bunch of things, a woman screaming, a little girl singing in the darkness. But the most interesting thing we captured was a full body figure that looked like an angry man, and the figure was just floating around the room.
Did you catch EVP what he said?
We did get a bunch of great evidence. Actually, at one point during our spirit box session, we actually captured a man's voice saying, "Help me."
Scottish castle.
Scotty's Castle was an amazing location. It was an absolute maze of buildings and tunnels. We got tons of evidence there. We heard doors opening in empty buildings. We saw shadows running around the tunnel. Even Aaron said that he saw a glowing figure in the distance. But the creepiest thing that took place there was when I was in the music room and I heard what sounded like a woman's voice right beside me saying, "Follow me."
Did you follow the voice?
Absolutely, I did. The voice was kind of creepy because as I was following it, it started whispering to me saying, "Come here." It felt as if some sort of entity was behind those whispers.
Orput. Wretch.
The Orcut Ranch was a creepy place because the main house was built over the original cemetery of the area. And when we were there, we heard footsteps, voices, whispering, and even shadow figures. But the most interesting thing that happened was when we were at this room that had a noose hanging from the ceiling, and my friend Nick felt a tug on his shirt while he was talking. It really scared him.
Ghost Island.
Ghost Island was great because it was an entire island that no one really knew the history of. We did hear someone crying in a building and even captured lights and whispers in another part of the house. But the creepiest thing we caught was when we were in one of the old houses and heard a voice say, "Go in there."
Did you catch any ghost there?
Oh yeah, there was an entity in that building for sure. There was some sort of entity there that was messing with us. We even have footage of that incident.
Sutro Ghost Town.
Sutro Ghost Town was scary. It was basically the site of an old town that was closed down after the 1906 earthquake. We heard a lot on that investigation, like a woman's voice saying, "I'm here," whispers, and even doors opening. But the creepiest moment that happened was when we were in the main building of the area and heard a child's voice saying, "I don't like this place."
The Beast of West Hills.
The Beast of West Hills was an interesting place to investigate, and there was definitely activity going on. We caught a door lock itself on us, heard tons of footsteps, and even got a lot of voices over a spirit box. But the creepiest thing that happened was what we called a shadow entity that darted across the room.
Villisca. Axe Murder House. Villisca.
The Villisca Axe Murder House was scary because that was the site of a gruesome murder of an entire family, and there's still bloodstains on the mattress in the room to this day. We caught tons on that investigation, like footsteps and voices, but the creepiest thing that happened was when my friend Nick was in that house by himself and heard a woman's voice saying, "I want to show you something."
Did you kitchen in voice, but the guy admitted he killed 6 of those kids?
Yeah, what really happened was a guy killed 6 kids in the attic, and he tried to burn the place down, but the fire was put out, so you can still see the bloodstains on the floors and stuff.
Is that house still haunted this day?
Absolutely. It feels like a very dark place. It's full of negative energy, and there's tons of evidence of paranormal activity.
You think the murder still lived there?
It definitely feels like there's somebody still living in that house, and it's definitely the spirit of that mass murderer.
How did it feel out the axe by the floor close to your neck? How did you feel?
It was a creepy feeling having the axe so close to me because the murders happened at nighttime, and the murderer crept up on those kids when they were sleeping. And just the thought of that makes the whole experience even more terrifying.
What was your childhood?
That's an interesting question. When I was a kid, I was a little bit scaredy cat because I was always afraid of the dark and I was always scared of the supernatural. This was a big reason why I got into this line of work. I wanted to get over my fear of the dark and the unknown. Since then, I've been having a lot of fun and traveling to a bunch of weird places.
You have a favorite moment with Robert the Doll?
Yeah, I do have a favorite moment with Robert, and it's kind of funny. But when I heard the story of his curses, I was a little freaked out and a little bit scared of him. So when I actually met him for the first time, I was nervous that I was going to get cursed. But the moment when I knew that it was going to be okay was when I accidentally backed into Robert's case and knocked it over. and immediately Robert started laughing hysterically.
How did you meet your girlfriend, Holly Madison?
Honestly, that was pretty interesting because we first met when I was doing an interview on a news station. And when I saw Holly standing behind the news station microphone, I thought to myself, man, this chick is adorable. I want to meet her. So after the interview, I went over to her and introduced myself. Then, as soon as we started having a conversation, we felt a connection almost immediately, and then we exchanged a few texts, and before you know it, we were dating.
Do you want any kids with her in the future?
Yeah, I want kids with her. We'll probably wait a bit because we're both pretty busy, but hopefully someday we'll have some Rugrats running around our house.
You was in Halloween Wars, correct?
Yeah, I was in an episode of Halloween Wars. It was actually pretty fun because I got to work with some of my friends and we made a pretty awesome coffin cake for that competition.
What's the creepiest, most terrifying Abbott Doll Island?
I'll be honest, I did not like Doll Island at all. The place was super creepy. It felt so dark and evil. Not to mention all the dolls that were all over the place. And the fact that all these dolls were placed there for a cursed ritual was even scarier.
Why are you scared of dolls so much?
Well, if you look at a lot of movies and other popular media, there's lots of stories of possessed dolls. Even if you look at the real story of the Raggedy Ann doll from the Warrens Museum, that doll was definitely evil. Dolls have that creepy energy, and when you get a whole place full of them, it can be very intense and scary.
What's the scariest thing about Annabelle the doll?
Scariest thing about Annabelle the doll is that she was an object that was used to bring a demon into the physical world. For me, that's a lot more scary than just encountering a possessed doll. Annabelle was created to be a vessel for the demon to reside.
You buy the Haunted Museum in downtown Las Vegas, a 13,000 square foot property built in 1938, which is home to a collection of macabre, haunted, and cursed objects.
The Haunted Museum is my absolute favorite place in Vegas right now, and I'm super glad I made the decision to buy that building. We have so many cool and iconic items in that museum right now, and we're getting more and more every day.
Las Vegas, Nevada, how cold and hot it used to be.
Las Vegas is usually pretty hot. During the summer, it can get up above 110 in the daytime, and in the winter, it can get into the 40s and 30s. So it's pretty much either boiling or freezing here. There's no in between, LOL.
A Clown Motel, how did you feel about that place?
Clown Motel was creepy when we first got there. It just had a ton of dark energy surrounding it. But when me and Nick were exploring the actual motel area, it felt like something was walking with us, and when we entered a room with a giant clown statue in it, the door slammed shut behind us, so we booked it out of there.
Have you ever caught anything? Clown Motel?
Yes, actually we have. When we were doing a spirit box session in this creepy clown room, one of the spirits started talking to us through the box and told us, "The clown has your soul."
Do you know why Ghost Adventures quit?
They never officially ended the show from what I can see. They just haven't done a season in some time because of other filming and traveling. But I really love the Ghost Adventures crew. They're all some really awesome people, especially Aaron. That guy is like my little brother.
How meet Aaron?
Well, Aaron has worked on Ghost Adventures since the beginning, so I've known him for a while now. But when we first met, he really scared me. I thought to myself, who the hell is this dude with the crazy hair at first? But as soon as we started talking and hanging out, I really liked the guy, and now the rest is history. I love that dude to death.
What one movie that scares you to death?
The one movie that scares me to death is The Exorcist. It's such a terrifying story, and the fact that it's based on a real story just freaks me out even more. And that scene where the girl turns her head a full 360 degrees, holy crap, that freaks me out.
We'll do Conjuring Mansion Day.
A Conjuring Mansion would be a dream. To be able to have all of these real objects in one house and let people know the story about where all these objects came from, and also let them have a chance to experience the paranormal firsthand would be an experience for sure.
We'll go Conjuring Hotel with your crew.
A Conjuring Hotel would be a dream to investigate. To have a whole hotel just filled with tons of things and let people experience the paranormal firsthand would be an incredible attraction. I personally think it would make a lot of money and be really exciting for everyone involved.
Dream place to visit.
I would have to say the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. That place is just a historic landmark, and there's so many things to check out there, as well as paranormal activity.
We'll go to Haunted Barn.
Going to a haunted barn would be pretty fun because there's a lot of them, and there's nothing like being in the middle of nowhere and being scared out of your mind when you're around a creepy barn.
Where is your favorite place to go?
My favorite place to go would be New Mexico because of all the ghost towns and haunted places, and because of the creepy Native American folklore as well.
If you can travel back in time, what year would to go?
If I had a time machine, I would go back to 1940s in New Orleans just because it seemed to have so much culture around music and partying, and not to mention it was an iconic time period.
If you met your childhood self, what will say to him?
If I could go back in time and meet my childhood self, I would tell him not to be scared of supernatural stuff because there's a lot of fun to be had with it. I would also tell him not to be scared of the dark and not to be a scaredy cat.
What is your favorite thing to do on TikTok?
I love watching the funny reels and memes. That's what I always look up at first. But I also like cooking videos and other educational videos.
Do you have a fave moment? Holly Madison.
One of my favorite things about Holly is everything. She's super into the paranormal, and I love going on investigations with her. She makes everything so much more fun, and she's not scared of anything.
Have any ghosts been following you?
I've had a couple of experiences with what I believe to possibly be a shadow figure that's been following me. I've seen a dark shadow following me in my house on multiple occasions.
Do you have any social media?
My Instagram is Zak Bagans. I'm on Twitter as Zak Bagans. My Facebook is Ghost Adventures Official, and you can check out my website at ghostadventures.net. You can also find me on TikTok as Zak Bagans.
How meet Nick Groff?
I meet Nick Groff as I was filming my first episode in the Winchester Mystery House. Nick was there to investigate with me and the crew for the filming of the episode, and it was a really awesome experience. He was nice, friendly, and cool to work with. Oh, and I almost forgot, while on that investigation, my friend Aaron was getting possessed in the basement, and I almost shat my pants.
Well, Zak Bagans, thanks for coming. You can say whatever you want.
Yep, make sure to give my friend Michael Gaming 2019 a like and subscribe for sharing this video with you today, and stay safe out there. It's a dangerous world full of evil spirits that could possess your soul. Until next time, stay tuned for the newest episodes of Ghost Adventures on the Travel Channel.